Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we sift through complicated research to extract the key knowledge you need fast. Today we are undertaking, well, a really critical mission, finding real-world, actionable solutions to one of the biggest challenges in marine conservation. We're doing this by deep diving into a foundational paper, Technical Mitigation Measures for Sharks and Rays in Fisheries for Tuna and Tuna-like Species, Turning Possibility into Reality, led by François Poisson back in 2016. Our goal isn't just abstract conservation talk. It's really to analyze the source material and uncover the pragmatic steps needed to significantly reduce the catastrophic bycatch mortality of elasmobranchs.
That's sharks and rays. Yeah.
Exactly. Sharks and rays within the massive global tuna fishing industry.
And that industry context really provides the scale of the challenge, doesn't it? Tuna fishing is, well, it's monumental. Global landings hit 7 million tons by 2010. But that economic success is deeply intertwined with environmental consequences. Tuna fisheries are consistently identified as one of the major threats to vulnerable marine vertebrates. And when you look at the figures, global discards were estimated at 6.8 million tons across all fisheries back in 2005. The sheer ecological and, I'd say, ethical urgency to find workable mitigation measures, or MMs, it just becomes undeniable.
Right. The difficulty, though, as the authors acknowledge, is that this isn't just one single problem. You've got diverse fishing methods, long lines, nets, signs, all operating in different oceans, different conditions. So how did Poisson and the team structure their approach? How do they tackle solving such a sprawling kind of worldwide challenge?
Well, they applied a really rigorous methodology. They focused on 4 main tuna fishery types: longline, purse seine, drift net, skill nets, and also the increasingly important rod and line, which covers recreational fishing. The team then collated an impressive 118 relevant studies, and get this, 87% of those had been published pretty recently, which just shows how fast this field is moving.
Oh, yeah.
But the real innovation, I think, was moving beyond just listing potential solutions. They developed a qualitative ranking system, a really structured way to assess the performance of every potential mitigation measure based on the current scientific consensus.
Okay, let's unpack that ranking system,
Right.
because this sounds like the core of the paper's utility, for managers and policymakers. It wasn't just a simple environmental grade then.
No, not at all.
The authors judged solutions against 14 distinct criteria, and they intentionally grouped these into 2 major or sometimes conflicting themes. The first theme was the biological and environmental impact. So asking questions like, does the measure actually reduce interactions with sharks? Does it improve their survival if they are caught? Does it maybe benefit other species like sea turtles?
Exactly. And the second theme is probably the most critical for real-world implementation: impact on fishing activity. This focused squarely on commercial viability. So, does the measure affect the yield of target tuna species? What's the cost?
Yeah.
Is it easy to implement? And maybe most importantly, will the fishers actually accept and support it?
The acceptance piece. Crucial.
Absolutely. They scored each of those 14 criteria on a 5-point scale, ranging from -2, meaning a highly negative impact or very low acceptance, all the way up to +2, meaning a very positive result. By summing these scores, they created an overall ranking. And this comprehensive score allows managers to prioritize solutions not just because they might be good for sharks, but because they're scientifically sound and commercially viable. Right.
Because let's face it, if a solution scores high ecologically but costs too much or tanks the tuna yield, it simply won't be adopted globally. It'll just sit on a shelf.
That's the mechanism of success right there, isn't it? If the solution doesn't offer some kind of direct or even indirect incentive to the crew, it just stays stuck in the lab. And here's where it gets really compelling, I think. Before diving into gear-specific modifications, the study identified 3 mitigation measures that scored highest. We're talking about 13 to 20 points across all fishery types.
Yeah, these are the big ones.
These are the immediate universal fixes.
These generic mitigation measures really are the low-hanging fruit for immediate global conservation success. First, and scoring high partly because it directly links to true safety, is the enforcement of safe handling and release protocols. This maximizes the post-release survival for animals that are caught and, importantly, minimizes risk to the crew handling them.
Makes sense. What's second?
Second, workshops and training programs. Simple, right? But this raises fisher awareness, improves species identification, which is crucial for compliance with regulations, and ensures proper release techniques are actually used out there.
Okay. Awareness and technique. And the third?
And third, the mandatory use of safe handling tools. We're talking about basic equipment here. De-hookers, long-handled cutters, dip nets, really simple, effective, and low-cost stuff.
So the common thread, as you point out, is that fishers are generally supportive of these three measures.
Mm,
They require limited financial expense, they're relatively easy to introduce, and sometimes, like with the handling tools, they actually improve crew safety.
exactly.
It's pretty much the definition of a conservation win-win that respects the operational reality of the fleet.
Absolutely. When the solution is practical and safe, you find that buy-in is almost immediate.
Okay, let's switch our focus now to the main commercial fishing methods, starting with the one that presents, well, the largest challenge and often the highest mortality rate, long lines.
Long lines. Yeah, they are catastrophic for sharks, unfortunately. They account for roughly 52% of the global shark catch. The bad news here is that truly effective operational modifications for this gear type are quite limited. But the study did highlight two top-rated solutions that are already feasible.
Okay, what are they?
The number one rated solution, scoring a high 19 points, was the prohibition of wire leaders.
Wire leaders. Okay, explain that.
Right. So a wire leader is traditionally used because it's tough, hard for a shark to bite through. However, if you mandate nylon leaders instead, sharks can frequently bite through and escape before the line is even hauled back to the boat. This reduces bycatch mortality. And critically, the study found that nylon leaders actually led to slightly higher catch rates of the target species, like big-eye tuna.
Really? Higher tuna catch?
Yeah, making it a much more viable operational shift for the fishers.
Wait, so hold on. We spent decades, probably millions, researching high-tech sensors and deterrents, and the best score comes from simply changing out a piece of wire for nylon. Doesn't that kind of suggest our conservation research focus might be, well, maybe a bit too skewed towards looking for shiny, complex technology instead of simple operational fixes?
It's a striking contrast, isn't it? The high-tech solutions you mentioned, things like magnetic, electropositive, or electrical deterrents, they scored only 7 points overall.
Only 7. Why so low?
The reason is pretty simple. According to the source material, they have never been successfully field-tested at scale outside of small, contained academic studies. The costs are currently prohibitive, and the efficacy is still largely theoretical.
Right.
It's a powerful lesson, in prioritizing low-tech, proven operational modifications over maybe theoretical high-tech promises that haven't panned out yet.
Okay. And what about the highly debated tool, the circle hook? They seem to be mandatory in some regions already.
Yeah, circle hooks. They scored moderately at 11 points. They are definitely a tangible option, and studies do show they can reduce post-release mortality for some species by improving where the hook lodges, usually in the jaw, not deeper. However, the study provides a critical warning here. The results are drastically variable. It depends heavily on the species and the region.
How so?
Well, in certain areas, circle hooks actually increased shark catch rates. So this means mandatory circle hooks cannot just be automatically transferred to new fisheries without dedicated specific trials first. The idea that they're a magic bullet is frankly misleading.
That difference between potential and reality is absolutely vital. Okay, let's pivot now to purse seines. You mentioned earlier there's been some more tangible success there, often driven by real-time collaboration with the industry.
Collaboration really seems to be the accelerant here, yes. Purse seine fisheries have benefited from recent breakthroughs, especially regarding drifting fish aggregating devices, or DFADs.
The FADs, right?
Yeah. The highest scoring success here at 17 points was the prohibition of entangling DFADs. Essentially, this means requiring non-entangling FADs. Getting rid of the netting often hung around the device where animals get caught. By doing that, the entanglement mortality of sharks and other bycatch groups like sea turtles is significantly reduced. It's a relatively simple design change with a big impact.
And beyond the FAD design itself.
Beyond the FAD design, certain vessel modifications were also highly ranked and, importantly, readily accepted by the industry. Mandatory use of a hopper, for instance, scored 15.
A hopper.
Yeah, it's basically a modification on deck that helps retain large sharks and other big bycatch on the upper deck, making it easier and safer to release them live back into the water quickly. And similarly, improved conveyor belt and waste chute designs scored 13. Again, sounds technical, but these just facilitate the quick release of bycatch directly from the lower sorting deck. Crews tend to welcome this because it helps clear the deck faster. Practical benefits again.
Okay, practical wins. Now, moving on to the gears that sound fundamentally the most difficult to modify for shark protection. Drift nets and gill nets.
Yeah, solutions here are, well, almost non-existent for the larger pelagic shark species. The core biological issue is that many sharks caught this way are ram ventilators.
Meaning they have to keep swimming to breathe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They need constant forward motion. They ram water through their gills to get oxygen. When they get restricted by the netting, their mobility is compromised. It's like suddenly cutting off their oxygen supply. This leads to extremely high, very rapid mortality. And the difficulty of solving this problem technologically suggests that the precautionary bans already enacted on large-scale drift nets by the TRFMOs.
The Regional Fishery Management Organization.
Correct. The TRFMOs, those bans were probably biologically appropriate given the high mortality risk.
Okay, so before we jump into the crucial mortality data itself, let's just tie this back to the effectiveness of the gear changes we've just discussed. We change the hook, we change the leader, we modify the FAD. But how do we actually know if it saves the shark in the end?
That's the absolutely critical link, isn't it? The success of any mitigation measure hinges entirely on the shark's survival rate after encountering the gear, which is why we have to delve into the vulnerability data now, and we need to distinguish between two stages of death, essentially.
Okay.
First, we have at-vessel mortality, or AVM. This is the immediate death rate, the sharks that are already dead when the line or net is hauled back to the boat. And this is highly species-specific. For instance, hammerhead sharks, thresher sharks, and silky sharks tend to have much higher immediate mortality rates compared to others.
Which ones are hardier?
Well, conversely, species like blue sharks, tiger sharks, and pelagic stingrays appear relatively hardy, at least initially. They have lower AVM rates.
That's a massive difference, though. When you look at that divergence, you set up to 92% mortality for silky sharks in some cases, versus much hardier species. It's just a stark reminder that the fishing operation itself is a high-speed, stressful environment. Some vulnerable species are simply not built to survive it.
Exactly. And the most stark example does come from those silky sharks, particularly in tropical purse seine fisheries. Studies show overall mortality rates for them between 81% and 92%. That reflects the extremely harsh, large-scale conditions they encountered during capture and sorting on deck.
81 to 92%. Wow. And AVM is, as you said, only half the story. We also need to understand post-release survival, or PRS, what happens after they're thrown back.
PRS is paramount, yes, because many sharks released alive may still die shortly afterward due to physiological stress, internal injury, or trauma from the capture event. Measuring this is the real challenge. The most effective monitoring tool we have, pop-up satellite archival tags, or PSATs, are prohibitively costly.
The satellite tags, yeah, very expensive.
Very expensive. And this has severely constrained our research, unfortunately. It results in very small sample sizes. We're often talking only a few dozen individuals tagged for major species, like blue sharks and silky sharks, studied globally. And the critical insight here, from the paper and subsequent work, is that research protocols have to be robust. If we base our PRS results only on the sharks that look healthy when they're released at the side of the boat,
Then we're missing the ones that die later.
Precisely. We are biasing the data and significantly underestimating the total capture mortality. We absolutely need reliable, large sample studies across all health categories, healthy, injured, stressed, to truly understand the fate of released sharks and ultimately to validate the efficacy of the gear changes we've been discussing.
Okay, so if we step back and look at the findings as a whole, what does this Poisson paper ultimately tell us about moving forward? You said earlier, and the study clearly states, there is no single silver bullet solution here.
No, definitely not. The core conclusion is that the successful strategy relies on a multi-pronged approach. It has to be a combination of measures gear modification, strategic changes like FAD design, improved handling protocols that must be meticulously tailored to the specific fishery, the region, the ocean conditions, and the exact species of concern. It requires systemic change, not just pinning hopes on a single invention.
A tailored combination. Okay.
And moving forward, future research priorities really need to include three major areas based on this work. First, validating those promising MMs that are still theoretical things like artificial bait or sensory deterrence. We need robust, large-scale field experiments. We need to stop guessing and actually test them properly.
Get them out of the lab.
Get them out of the lab, exactly. Second, we desperately need to improve species-specific PRS estimates using those robust, large sample studies we just talked about, covering all conditions of sharks. And critically, third, managers need to actively encourage, maybe even mandate, genuine collaboration among gear technologists, fishers, and scientists. This ensures new tools, whether it's improved hook designs or new hook removal systems, are practical, affordable, and actually accepted by the industry.
It sounds like a scientifically rigorous roadmap toward practical conservation. It really does. But this brings us to the final provocative question that the paper implicitly raises, I think. The Tuna Regional Fishery Management Organizations, the TRFMOs you mentioned, they've adopted something like 35 different conservation measures since 2004. Yet actual compliance on the water and getting realistic catch statistics remain highly uncertain in many areas. So this raises an important question for you, the listener, to mull over. Is the biggest barrier to shark conservation really technical innovation? The kind of things we've been discussing today, the gear, the techniques, or is it actually the political will and the enforcement structure needed to make these scientifically validated solutions mandatory and truly enforceable across the vast global fishing fleet? Something to think about. We've covered a lot today. The rigorous methodology of ranking solutions, the immediate universal fixes available that rely on fisher incentive, the specific breakthroughs needed in long-line and purse seine fisheries, and that vital data gap concerning post-release survival.
Yeah, the science is becoming clearer. The path forward seems to be defined by translating these ranked findings, these possibilities, into effective collaborative management and, crucially, mandatory fishing practices. It's essential for the future of these important pelagic elasmobranch populations.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.